Welcome to Confessions of an SEO. This is Carolyn Holzman. If this is your first time listening, welcome. There are a lot of topics I've touched on beforehand, so feel free to go back and you can at least see which episodes you may want to listen to because I've actually now created a completely separate podcast site, confessionsofanseo.com. Now, it's not gorgeous. It's not going to make you see stars and go like, oh my God, what a beautiful site. It's really serving as a repository of all these episodes. It's very basic. So I'm going to be testing some of the peripheral aspects of having a podcast, things like embeds and backlinks that are naturally generated as part of the podcast environment. So I'll keep you posted on those add-ons and keep, update you with the mechanics of podcasting. All right. I have two topics I want to touch on today. And before I do, I just want to mention I really appreciate your questions and comments that you send in. If you're new, you can send questions, comments, anything you want. Well, not anything, but you can use the email confessions@americanwaymedia.com. Even though I have the podcast site, I'm not going to create another email. And I guess some of you know I'm all about keeping it simple. Going back to the two topics. The first one. I was watching a news show that was talking about radio, and it's really hard to hear about radio and not think about how podcasting has really changed the reality of radio. They were interviewing people who had been influential in the starting of this network they were talking about, and one of them had written the mission statement. All right, I know, a mission statement feels kind of formal and stiff. From there, it got me thinking about this podcast, which I've always said, they're love letters to all of us as SEOs and to the businesses that we serve. And that got me thinking a little more. There's a small segment of this guy's mission statement that really resonated with me. So I'm going to try it out here, at least to plant the flag. All right, so here goes. I do not regard this audience as a market or in terms of its ability to pay, but to engage with curious and complex SEOs, business owners, and stakeholders who are looking for some understanding, meaning, and maybe a little joy as a human in a search engine experience. So I'm going to play around with that a little. I just thought I'd throw it out there, make myself a little bit more accountable and have maybe a bigger vision about this. Okay, so now topic number 2, and this is the main topic I'm going to talk about today. It's about the volatility in SERPs. Now, I'm going to do one episode now that's going to mostly address it for business owners. So I'm going to explain some of those things. Like I said, volatility in SERPs, that search engine results page. When you look for something and it's the things that the pages that Google sends back. There was a topic, and I'd been chewing on this for a while. This volatility question, like not so much what is it, but how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it as SEOs? But also, how do we deal with our clients' expectations? I mean, we cannot ignore the fact that this is a real thing. So there was an online discussion where it was talking about what constitutes indexing. And I know you're thinking, what a sexy topic, Carolyn. But hang in there with me. I'm going to spend today, like I said, talking with business owners and marketing directors who might not be so deep down into the mechanics of SEO. I will not go to the nitty-gritty details. I mean, if you want that, fine. Send me an email. I'll put it in the show notes or something. But basically, the general gist of that online conversation was all the different ways that a URL can be viewed by Google. And you can see this when you go into Google Search Console, that when you inspect a URL, you can see what does Google say about it. And the guy was making the point, his name is Ted Kubitis, he's creator of SEO software tools, amazing software tools, I should say. And he said something really important. And it went something like, don't let others pollute the information in general and the diagnostic value of that information. Primarily, the point was that we needed to use greater precision in our terms for our own diagnostic purposes, and that we shouldn't hand that responsibility over to Google to explain what's going on, because in reality, when Google's input is sort of injected into that conversation, it really just complicates things. And to quote Ted, keeps us dumb and arguing amongst ourselves. So for instance, Google will and has in the past turned off activities that happen behind the scenes, like once we hit publish on a page, there's a whole lot of things that happen before we start to see that same page indexed for our intended keywords. There's not a lot of useful information on all those things that have to happen, all the processes that go on once it's injected out there where the bots can find it. And Google has certain things turned on and turned off at various times. So right now, at the time of this broadcast, the quick rendering indexing is turned off. It's not working. Now, they really could let us know that kind of information and tell us that we should wait before reacting, but they don't do this. And I'm going to go back to what Ted said because he said it very plainly. Quote, "They like the panic and confusion. The correct course of action for legitimate websites for this type of event is to do nothing and wait. And Google could prevent the panic and prevent many SEOs from being fired for volatility that's outside of their control and which will automatically fix itself, often with time," unquote. And he goes on to say, Google chooses not to because they're perfectly fine. But if you as an SEO get fired for something that they do and choose to hide, how ethical is that? Well, I don't think it is. And I think the fact that it's a topic, it's probably at the heart of the misunderstanding that a business owner holds about whether or not their SEO is working hard enough for that business. If a business owner really knew how much of the SEO's job is spent on making those page changes, those backlinks, and start to work when it's completely outside of their power, they might understand better the responses from the SEO and that these responses are truthful and are not excuses. For instance, if Google can't index new content for 3 to 4 to 6 weeks, what do you as a business owner expect your SEO to be able to do? They can keep coaxing, which typically means, resubmitting through Search Console or their sitemap or any other number of things. And they're doing all the things that currently we know, all the levers that we have access to, so that the moment when Google is back to indexing again, everything is fine. Traffic is up and leads are coming in again. All of that confusion right now, this is totally on Google, totally on their system and all their different divisions and departments and whatever we want to call them, that they may not have ever talked to each other. And I can say it very often, it's clear that when someone does something over on this side of their processing, very often it either breaks something else or opens up another can of worms. If you've ever programmed, my God, you've got to know this. And the critical piece is that they have zero incentive to tell us what's going on behind the scenes. Occasionally, we'll get some kind of press release or an acknowledgement if there's a bug, but it's got to be pretty apparent. But what we're seeing in testing, and you can see things when they start indexing or stop indexing or only index certain types of pages and not others. It sure would be nice if Google would agree and say, yeah, we're having a little trouble, but they're not going to. And that's why I think I'm on the bandwagon of support for all of us as SEOs that start panicking when these things happen, because I think a lot of business owners, they look to us. And if they see us panicking or we don't have an answer, sometimes the answer is Google changes. Google changes pages periodically, and there's a built-in volatility so that sometimes your page goes up or down just a little, just because. It has nothing to do with your SEO. And I'm sure many of us have been called into somebody's office or onto the carpet because at the end of the month, the page went down 1 or 2 spots from where it was last month. That business owner needs to be told repeatedly, and if necessary, often, that their position in the SERPs is always changing, and there is nothing anyone is doing wrong or not enough. And when I say anyone, I mean the SEO, because everything they're seeing is Google. That is not within our control. Now, if it goes down 10 spots, and I got to tell you, I just had one of my live environment pages last week, one of the terms dropped for like 51 spots. Holy shit. Google was going through an update. Now, I didn't do a thing, nothing. I didn't even open it up and resubmit it. I did nothing. And within 48 hours, it jumped up 56. So like a net +5. And this is my page, right? And I know what's happening. I don't have anybody looking over my shoulder at what happened or saying, you better get that fixed. So the question I want to put out there to you as business owners, if you were talking with me, I would want to say like, well, how can I fix something that I didn't break? So that's kind of where I think we need to be able to have this conversation with our clients and business owners. I think you need to understand that this is Google. And I know part of what we've done, I think, is abdicate our duty as SEOs to describe these things and to be precise and to be able to explain them to businesses, because they're just going to read the latest Google newsletter and say, oh, Google is the friend of my business, trying to help me. Well, maybe, but maybe not. As a business owner, look to that which you assume. If you assume Google cares about your business and it's your SEO that doesn't, remember, it's just as equally possible that you are wrong as you are right. So if one reality is possible, if you think Google is your friend and the SEO is not, it's also equally possible that the reality could be Google is not your friend and your SEO is. And once you know that Google doesn't mind keeping SEOs in the dark, why would you be so special? Like why would Google single you out and favor you? Well, on that lovely note, that's the end of this episode. It has been a pleasure. Next week, I will still be talking about this topic, but mostly directly to the SEO and ways to discuss this topic with your clients. Send your questions and comments to confessions@AmericanWayMedia.com. Check out confessionsofanseo.com. This is Carolyn Holzman. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the SERPs.